109. Yep, we finished 109. We're just going to start on chapter 15, counseling guidelines. Is that right? You all there?
I
Oh.
guess. My
You
foot's
get-
at home.
Okay. Counseling guidelines, page 110 in the textbook. The following are ideas that I feel are important to the ministry of a counselor. These concepts will help build confidence in counseling. By the way, y'all are doing your workbook, right?
Oh yeah, mine finished.
You're doing your workbook?
No,
Oh.
it's good. Yeah, we'll do it.
Oh, that didn't sound good.
Really?
Yeah,
I guess I'll have to, but it kind of follows this, doesn't it?
it does exactly.
Okay.
I had to get permission, it's so
Yeah.
close, I had to get permission from the author because it follows chapter and headings.
He doesn't have
I
a
think this is the one
workbook.
where I was missing the workbook.
He doesn't
Oh,
have a
okay, I'll
workbook.
get you one. Yeah, I'll get you one. Yeah, sorry about that. I
That's good.
thought everybody had them.
Well, I came in
No, the
class
workbook,
late.
Jim.
Okay.
I gave it a semester.
Well, yeah, but still, I should have got you one. Number one, the wise counselor will always use an appointment book for scheduling appointments. That's a no-brainer. Very few independent Baptist churches have millionaires in them. I mean, I've been all over. I've been from here all the way to the Gulf of Mexico at Corpus Christi, preaching revivals and stuff. California, all the way up to Alaska. And you find very few. Now, there's a few churches you'll find a few upper middle class and millionaires in there, but very few. And one of the reasons is the average independent Baptist church is run by the pastor, and he doesn't really generally keep most of them. Some of them do. But too many of them don't keep an appointment book. They don't run it like a business. They're so busy doing everything that they don't have it written down, you know, and organized like a business. And when a businessman comes into your church, he's going to look at your office, and he's going to judge you by what your office looks like.
Uh-oh.
That's why I don't take anybody into my study, because it's not an office. It's my study. It's
Yeah.
literally that deep all around me with
If you're
books and
working in there, Doc.
material. But that's it. That's just a study. If I'm going to have an appointment, I meet them over here. I meet them over here, because they're going to judge you and the way you run your church, or for the Sunday school, the way you run the Sunday school. Parents are going to judge that by how organized you are. That's why we have a management class that about, probably another year or two we'll get back to it. I think you took it last time. Teaches you how to network with other people, teaches you how to be organized, things like that. And the curriculum, the papers that I use that we derive the curriculum from is from a group called Leadership IQ. It's online, you can look it up. He's the guy that when KeyBank or Wells Fargo, maybe this Wells Fargo, this particular branch right over here, is not doing as well as they should, they'll pay him or some of his crew to come over and spend 2 weeks with him from England. They'll fly him over here. They don't put him up in Motel 6. I'll guarantee you that. I don't mind Motel 6, but a businessman's not going to stay there. So they'll spend thousands to ship him and maybe one or two other people over here. They'll spend 2 weeks at the bank. They'll go through and watch the people as they work, and then they formulate a business plan of how that particular branch can do better, more efficiently, which of course more efficient means more money for the business. And then they have to pay him while he teaches them how to be more business-like and get things done. Then they fly him home. What are we talking about? $15,000, $20,000, $25,000, $30,000. So he told me we could use their basic material, that we could use it in the college, and we do. And that's what he's saying. You need to be business-like about it, about the Lord's business. Because when a businessman comes in and you're not there, you show up 5 minutes later, what do you think the chances are he's going to come back or even wait for you?
None.
Probably between 0 and nothing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Because he's a businessman. He didn't get to where he was by being lackadaisical about his business. And so, and I've said this before, I'm sure some of you have heard it maybe in this class. When I was in Bible college, I had a couple of teachers that kept saying, the church is not an organization, it's an organism. Remember what I said? What if my hand tries to be my brain? Or my brain tries to be my big toe? Or my leg tries to be my wrist? Is this body going to function? No. An organism without organization dies. Same way with the church. A church is the body of Christ. The local church is the body of Christ. But it has to be organized or it will die. And that's why many churches die, and that's why you don't see too many millionaires in very many of our independent Baptist churches. Because they come in, see disorganization, they're never going to come back. They're not going to give a nickel. They're not going to join the church, start tithing. Because, you know, if they're a millionaire making $1 million a year, their tithe is $100,000. Are they going to put it into chaos? Put it into something that they look at and go, I don't see how that could ever work. And so keep an appointment book. Always be there before the appointment starts. If the appointment's at 1 o'clock, don't get there at 1 o'clock. Get there at least 10 minutes, at least 5 minutes early, or 10 minutes early. Start on time. If the appointment starts at 1 o'clock, you start at 1 o'clock. If it's from 1 to 1:30, you're done at 1:30. Because that's what that businessman expects. That's what any organized person expects. Because if your appointment is between 1 and 1:30 and you got it in your appointment book, at 1:30 that person is planning on leaving and meeting their next appointment or carrying out the next job that they're going to be doing. So if you keep until 1:45, they're not going to come back. They're just not going to do that. That's not the way the Western mind works. Remember I said the Eastern mind, the Jews and the Muslims and that, don't expect them to think like us. They don't. The Western civilization goes by the clock. And then we plan things, 1, 2, 3, 4, right in order we're going to do it. Eastern mind doesn't work that way. They decide what all they're going to have to do, and they'll probably do it in order, but if they write down what they're going to do, they may put number 1 and number 4 and number 7 and number 8 and number 9. They're just making a list of things they need to do. They don't, and much of the New Testament, especially the Gospels, Matthew was written to the Jews, Luke was written to the Gentiles, Mark was kind of written to everybody, and then John, of course, is the love book. It talks about God and the love of God, for God so loved the world and so forth. But in Matthew, things are not always chronological, 1, 2, 3, 4, because that's not the way the Eastern mind works. And so, and actually I think the Hispanics are, especially in church, they're even a little more organized, aren't they? They expect things to be right in order. But the Western, and of course the Hispanic would be part of the Western civilization. And so if a businessman is that way, if he's you know, an American, been here for enough time, maybe not natural born, but here enough time to absorb the culture, he's going to expect you to start at 1 o'clock and you're going to get over at 1:30. You're not going to hurt his feelings by saying, well, it's 1:30, we'll pick this up next time. When would you like to meet again? And he expects that. Why? Well, because that's the way he ran his business. And so keep an appointment book. Number 2, the wise counselor will attempt to ascertain how long each appointment may take based on the need. Yeah, I can't think of an example right offhand, but maybe one need is only going to take a 15-minute session. Maybe it's going to be something you can just settle in the hallway in 1 minute. Why have an hour appointment tomorrow when a 1-minute conversation today? Well, you know, I got this problem with smoking, but I don't find anywhere in the Bible that says thou shalt not smoke. Well, I don't need a half-hour counseling session. The person's saying, well, you know, I've been trying to I've been trying to quit smoking, but I'm not succeeding very well at it. But you know, and then he's going to try to justify it, you know, or she is. Well, but you know, I didn't find anywhere in the Bible that says thou shalt not smoke. It's not going to take a half-hour counseling session for me to answer that question. The Bible says thou shalt not kill. Is smoking killing people? Yes. Then by smoking you're committing suicide. Is that killing? Yes. Well, then the commandment applies here. It says thou shalt not kill. That includes suicide, killing yourself. And they'll say, well, but how do I quit smoking? I said, well, it's simple. Don't stick a cigarette in your mouth. Well, it's not easy. Well, I didn't say it was easy. I said it was simple. They don't mean the same thing. Simple means not complicated. Easy means without effort. Now, to try to figure out a way to help them stop smoking, yes, that would need some counseling sessions. But as to whether it was right or wrong, well, I don't remember reading in the Bible where it says thou shalt not smoke. Well, see, that question I can answer in 1 minute. I don't need it, half hour. But when they say it's not easy, well, I say, yes, I understand it's not easy, but it is simple. Now we'll set up an appointment to help you figure out how to overcome the difficulty, because it's not easy. By the way, under President Reagan, what did they call him? The head of the medical for the federal government.
Surgeon General.
Surgeon General. The Surgeon General did a 5-year study and found out smoking is more addicting than crack cocaine. 50% of people are addicted with their first cigarette. 50% of people are addicted to tobacco, well, actually to the nicotine, with their first cigarette. It is easier to quit crack cocaine than it is to quit tobacco. So don't get down on someone just because they smoke. And, well, just don't stick it in your mouth. Well, no, that's a simple solution, but it's not an easy one. So decide, is it going to take 1 minute to answer the question? But then you might have to make a half-hour appointment for the next day or whatever, or whenever you're going to make the appointment, or maybe a 1 hour. Now, some things might take an hour. Some things generally take a half hour. I find most of my counseling sessions are about 45 minutes to an hour. I try not to ever let them go over an hour, because I haven't had anybody come with anything for counseling that I thought would take more than 1 hour. And most people can't absorb more than that anyway. That's why our church services and our independent Baptist churches are 1 hour long. Because the average American, you can't keep their attention for more than an hour. Why? Television programs. The attention span of the average American is about 7 seconds. How does TV work? Well, it shows you guys over my shoulder for 2 or 3 or 4 seconds. Then it shows over his brother Edgar's shoulder, it shows his face. And then 5 or 7 seconds later, then it goes over to a close-up of her face. And then it goes over his shoulder to show his face. See, every 5 or 7 seconds, they're changing the perspective of the picture. It's actually programmed the brains of the average American that you can't keep their attention on one thing for more than 5 to 7 seconds. That's why when you preach or you teach, you don't stand there like this. Why? Well, because you need something to get their attention. See, that gets your attention. You've got to be mobile while you're doing it. You've got to change your voice. I've gone to the services in the Mormon church, and they're not just boring, they're painfully boring. I mean, this is an excited sermon. The following are ideas that I feel are important to the ministry of a counselor. Those concepts will help build confidence in counseling.
Oh, my.
Is that, am I right or not?
Perfect.
That's exactly, because I know I've been there and listened to it.
Dead on.
It's not boring, it's painfully boring.
Oh.
Okay? So you don't want to do that. You need to get their attention, and I find that the average American can take about 45 minutes, and then the next 10 minutes or so we're winding down the counseling session. And by the end of an hour, it's over. It's over. And that's why our services last an hour. Same reason. Okay, so that was number 2. Number 3, the wise counselor will ask the person seeking counsel to bring a list of the things he needs to discuss. In the back of the workbook are those forms, counseling forms that I handed out. And the first counseling session has a list of, I think, 7 questions for her and 7 questions for him. Or you can use the 7 questions for a single person that comes in. I won't do marriage counseling unless the husband and wife are both there. It's impossible. You can't do marriage counseling with just one of them there. Now, if the wife comes and the husband refuses to come, I'll do personal counseling to teach her how to cope. You know, how to, as a Christian, what you should do, what God expects of you, and how to cope. I can teach her that, but that's not marriage counseling. And by the way, the government says we can't do marriage counseling to begin with. We can do biblical counsel about marriage, but we can't do marriage counseling. Legally, that terminology. So I can give you biblical counsel on any subject, including marriage, but I can't do marriage counseling. That's just in the last few years. They've hogtied us. Okay, so the wise counselor will ask the person seeking counsel to bring a list of the things he needs to discuss, and that list in the back of the book is the things for you to, questions to ask them. In that list, I love it, I keep getting the same answer, probably 19 times out of 20. I'll ask the husband, why did you come today? What's the answer 19 times out of 20?
She made me.
She made me. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, they'll say that. She made me. She made me
She
come.
did.
Yeah, I know. That's the way women are. Okay? That's because sometimes they got more brains. Remember, man, what did God make Adam out of?
Soil.
The dirt. Yeah, the dirt. And by the way, science says that our bodies are made up of the elements of common dirt. That's the elements in our bodies. So that even shows that God was right. You know, I mean, the Bible was right. God made Adam out of the dirt. So remember that man is refined dirt. Woman is refined man. She's one more step refined than we are. They don't think the same as we do. Don't expect them to. That causes a lot of problems in marriage, is when the woman expects the man to think like her. Or the man expects the woman to think like him. That's just not the way it works. God made us different. We're to complement each other. We're to complement each other. But that doesn't mean that we think the same. It means our thinking, if it's properly melded together, makes us a better person, because we are one flesh. Okay. Number 4 on page 112. Counseling should be about personal problems, not doctrinal issues. Bible study is for doctrine. Counseling is for personal problems. In fact, if they've got a doctrinal issue, they probably haven't been coming to church. Anybody in here think God is stupid?
No.
Anybody in here think that God doesn't know what's going on in his child's mind? Do you think God maybe would have the preacher preach on that exact doctrinal issue? I do. Because God uses the preacher to meet the needs of God's children. That's what the preacher is there for. And so if that person's got a doctrinal issue, that means they either have not been in church, or they have not gone to the pastor and say, Pastor, I got a problem. Remember when you go to people, never point your finger and say, hey, you. No, you always go and say, yeah, I got a problem. And then the person will say, well, what's the problem? Well, my problem, Pastor, is I want to understand this, and I can't quite get a handle on it. You preach this, and my Bible says this, and I'm having trouble reconciling these two. Would you help me? See, that's not accusing. That's saying, man, I want to find out what's going on. I want to be able to reconcile what you're preaching with what I see in this particular scripture here. How can I put these two together and reconcile? And so they've either not been in church, or they'd have heard a sermon about that doctrinal issue, or if there was a problem, they should have gone to the pastor about it and not come to the counselor about it. Okay, make sense? Or you know, go to the pastor and say, hey, could we study this issue out? Because I got a problem getting my head around this. I need some help here. And that's the proper way to go to your pastor, is asking him for help, because a pastor is a servant. And that's his job, is to minister. Jesus came not to be ministered to, but to minister. And that's what a pastor does, is minister to the needs of the people. Okay? So counseling should be about personal problems, not doctrinal issues. Number 5, before the I'm on page 113. Number 5, before the actual appointment, the wise counselor will take time to investigate the person with whom he will be counseling, especially concerning business appointments. Before a businessman, a successful businessman, will come to a pastor or someone for counseling, Christian counseling, they already know everything about you before they'll come and trust themselves to you. And especially the millennials. I was raised, and even though I was a heathen, I respected the Bible. I wouldn't argue with anybody, but when the Bible says thou shalt not, I knew I shouldn't. I knew it. I had no doubt, but I decided to go ahead and do wrong anyway. But that was my decision. I didn't question the Bible. I didn't question the preacher. When the preacher would come by, if you'd be standing there with a can of beer and a cigarette, you'd just about swallow that cigarette and throw the can of beer across the street. Just because the pastor was coming, you'd hide the beer. put the cigarette, try to get the stink out of you if he was coming to talk to you. We respected the pastor, even though I didn't go to church. We respected the man of God. We respected the Bible of God. Church was a place of comfort and peace and a place where you're to learn about God. We respected church. Millennials don't respect anybody. They don't trust anybody. They don't trust the government because they've seen what the government's done. They don't trust church. They don't trust the Bible. They don't trust the preacher. Why? Well, because mom and dad went to church faithfully every Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night for 15 years. And when I was 15 years old, they wound up getting a divorce. Well, what good was your God to them? What good was your church to them? Your Bible didn't prevent them from getting a divorce. Going to church faithfully 3 times a week for 15 years didn't stop them from getting a divorce. So what good are you? That's the way the millennials think. They don't trust you. A pastor has to earn their trust. The church has to earn their trust, showing it is applicable and good for their life, and the Bible has to be proven to them the same way. Well, that's not fair. Well, who said it was fair? Nobody said life was fair. What's fair is if Bill Gates had my money and I had his. Just think what I could do for the Lord with, a few $1 billion a year. Or the guy in Amazon, the guy that started Amazon is now officially the richest man in the world.
Wow.
He's worth over $100 billion personally, not his company. He's worth over $100 billion. He makes $1 million like a day or a week or something. $1 million a day.
That's selling stuff on the computer, Amazon, right?
Amazon that does the selling and stuff.
Yeah.
And Bill Gates the same way. He's multi-billionaire. Probably one of the 5 or 10, probably one of the 5 richest men in the world. He might be number 2 behind the guy that runs Amazon. And so it's not fair that I have no money and they got all that money. It should be the other way. Well, no, it just bees that way sometimes. I mean, that's the way life is. Some people got money, some people don't have money. So, well, and I hate prosperity gospel. Well, if you were really a good, faithful Christian, God would bless you and make you rich. Was Jesus a good, godly man?
Yes.
Was Jesus faithful?
Yes.
Was Jesus in God's perfect will?
Yes.
Then how come he didn't have a house to have a bed in? He didn't have a bed to put a pillow on. He didn't have a pillow to put his head on. I guess then maybe he must have been out of the will of God, because according to the prosperity gospel, he couldn't be broke like that. He had to get his tithe. He had to get his tax money out of the mouth of a fish. So this prosperity gospel that if you're in the will of God, God will bless you and you'll have an abundance of money and stuff like that. No. If that was true, then Jesus was in the wrong business. He was not in God's business, or God would have made him a millionaire. You see the falsity of that kind of thinking. And so, before the actual appointment, the wise counselor will take time to investigate the person. That person knows how much money you make, how successful your church is, what kind of a teacher you are, how many students you have, whatever it might. He knows everything about you before he'll ever use his time to come to you for counseling. So you better know where his business is. Man, how are the widgets doing this year? I mean, because you got to use a little bit of, If a man's going to have friends, he must show himself friendly. You got to have the icebreakers. So the guy is a billionaire because of making widgets. There's no such thing as a widget. It's just what we use, okay? And so, man, how's the widget business going? I saw the other day on the Dow, widgets were up 5%. That's wonderful, boy. I bet you love that, don't you? What do people like to talk about?
Widgets.
The widgets.
Well, the widget man likes to talk about widgets. He likes to talk about himself, how successful he is. That's just human nature. They want to talk about themselves. The one leading the conversation is not always the one talking. It's the one asking questions. So if you can tell him, man, widgets, I saw Wednesday, widgets, or Tuesday, I saw widgets were up 5% on the Dow. That's great, man. I bet you just love that. Oh man, he's going to start telling you all about widgets. Use the first 10 minutes, you're establishing rapport. No one will trust what you say until they trust you. I hate putting it this way, but I have to. You have to sell yourself. When you're preaching or when you're teaching, or when you're counseling, you have to sell yourself personally first to the person before they'll listen to what you're saying. They're not going to take the biblical counsel from you unless they trust you personally. So once you let him talk about his widgets for 5 or 10 minutes, and I'm sorry to hear that your son was in the emergency room the other night, fell out of the tree, broke his leg, didn't you? Well, my kid, he did the same kind of thing. He didn't break the leg, but he hurt himself. And so you just conversation, but you need to know something personally about the person. You need to know how successful they are in their business, what their business is, the wife, how many kids. Investigate them before they show up for a meeting, especially if it's a business person, because they've done that to you. They've already investigated you. But for anyone else, at least find out if the guy's got a wife and kids. Find out if he's working right now or if he's out of a job. If he's out of a job, that's probably one of the reasons he came for counseling. Not that he's out of a job, but why is he out of a job? Remember peeling the onion? The symptom may be out of work and can't find a job, but that's not the problem. That's the symptom of why is he out of work. Might be his fault, might not be his fault. So you need to know something about him before the appointment. That was number 5. Number 6, on page 114, the wise counselor won't automatically assume that a businessman is a success in all areas of his life. He's a successful businessman. He's a billionaire making widgets. And his wife has a lover on the side, and one of his kids isn't even his. And he doesn't know that. See, he could be a whiz at business, and his personal life could be all messed up. So don't just assume because he's a rich businessman, successful businessman, that he's successful in all areas of his life. His family life could be a mess, and he could still be a billionaire. In fact, many billionaires and many successful preachers, their private life, their family life is a mess. There was a famous preacher that just died a few years back, had the largest Sunday school in America. He had the largest church service in America. He had 150,000 people on one Sunday in church. To do it, he had to have television cameras and shooting over to warehouses that he had rented around where the church was that would hold 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000 people, and chairs in them, and he was on the television, and so they had that one big conglomerate service. He did all of that. Then after he was dead, one of his kids came out with a book and said, Mom and Dad didn't sleep together the last 15 years of their life. The only reason she didn't divorce him is he asked her not to, because he knew it would destroy that ministry. He was successful, man. I mean, he was one of the most successful preachers that come to my mind in our circles anyway. But his family life was a mess. Why? Most preachers lose their wives because they're married to the ministry instead of to the wife. What came first, marriage or the church?
Marriage.
Marriage came first in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve. The church wasn't until Cain and Abel. That's the first mention of corporate worship, is when Cain and Abel got together and bring an offering to the Lord. I tell people they must have been Baptists because one of them killed the other one. How many times in our independent Baptist churches are Christians, wonderful, upright, outstanding Christians, tithing, helping with the ministries of the church and everything, and then when a brother or sister falls, they kick him in the head. See, they're a success in all of these areas, but they're a failure over here. That businessman might be the same way. Don't assume, just because he's a successful businessman, that all of the areas of his life are a success. He could be a total failure over here, and an absolute shining example over here. So don't just automatically assume, well, it must be somebody else's fault. No, he just probably has no skills in that particular area, but he has in many others. Number 7, the wise counselor will love everyone the same. The guy that you meet on the street that's drunk and puking in his shoes, or the church member that comes to church every Sunday in a suit and tie. You're supposed to love them the same. Supposed to love them the same. Doesn't make it. God's no respecter of persons. That guy is there, and there's a reason why he's there. That woman that's standing on the corner selling her body, there's a reason why she's there. That person that's in church with a suit and tie, you're supposed to love them exactly the same. I'm writing the men's, I think I mentioned it in the last class, I'm writing the, not the lesson coming up Saturday, but the lesson for when I get back, because the fourth week we're not going to have a meeting, I'll be in Italy. But I'm writing that lesson, and that's one of the things that's in the lesson is it's about the character trait of love, and you're to love everyone as God loved everyone. You're to love your church like you love your wife. You're to love your enemies the way God loves your enemies, because God so loved the world. That goes from Hitler to the Pope. It goes from the businessman to the drunk, puking in his shoes on the curb, or puking on his shoes. Maybe in them, you might have them off. But you're to show the love of God to all of them the same. Doesn't make any difference. The circumstances in their life makes no difference. There's still a soul. And you're to love that soul. I don't have to love the things they're doing, but I got to love the soul, the person. And it's not easy. That was number 7. The wise counselor will love everyone the same. Number 8, it is not always necessary for a counselor to give a complete answer in one counseling session. I tell people this when they come to counseling, and they think there's no hope. In a nice way, I try to tell them, listen, you didn't mess your life up in a day. You're not going to straighten it up in a day. It might have taken you 15 years to get in the shape you're in. I'm not saying it's going to take 15 years to get rid of that problem, but it's going to take some time. First, we've got to find out what the problem is. Most people come for counseling don't know what the problem is. The guy will come and say, well, my problem is my wife had an affair. Men give love to get sex. Women give sex to get love. If a wife is having an affair on a husband, the chances are probably 9 out of 10, or better than that, she's not feeling loved at home. So she's giving sex to someone else to get affection and attention from them. Now those are general principles, but they'll hold true 9 times out of 10, or maybe 19 times out of 20. And so the guy thinks that his problem is his wife had an affair. Now his problem is deeper than that. It's probably because he got so busy with his business that he forgot about his wife. Or he got so busy with his church or with his or her class and forgot about their mate. And so the mate is looking for love. Most women are not looking for sex, they're looking for love. They're looking in, as the old song goes, looking for love in all the wrong places. But still, that's why they do it most of the time. And sometimes they just do it to get even with a husband. They'll go have an affair. I'll teach him. My mom used to say, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Well, that's the principle. If he can do it, she'll say, he did it, and I forgave him, and he did it again. I'll show him what it feels like. And she'll go have an affair. Why? Because she's not getting the affection, the love that she wants in that marriage. And it is the husband's duty. God gave men a command. Men, love your wives. That's not a suggestion. And love, in the men's lesson, I was writing, love is an action word. I could say I love my wife all I want. And if I never show it to her, is she going to know it? Love kept inside is worthless. Love is only worth something when it's showed, because it's shown to people. Because it not only makes them feel good, it makes you feel good to know that they love you. And you showed it to them, guys. Take her out to dinner, buy her a dress. Send her over to the big hotel downtown for one of them $75 massages. Something. Show her, say, hey, you'd be surprising how relaxing that could be. Okay? And so you have to show it to them. And you can't give a complete answer in one counseling session to most problems. It's usually going to take more than one. Once in a while you'll find one that you can, hey, one session the guy goes, or the gal goes, now I get it. That wasn't my problem. This is my problem that's causing that symptom. But that's not going to be very often. That's going to be the exception. Okay? So number 8 was, it is not always necessary for a counselor to give a complete answer in one counseling session. Number 9, a wise counselor will spend some time thinking through his promises before making them to the person seeking counsel. Don't make any promises that you can't keep. Better think through. You might promise you're going to do something to help solve the problem, and then find out later that you're not able to do that thing. Are they going to come back for more counseling? No, they don't trust you anymore. Number 10 on page 115, the wise counselor will not always do for the one seeking counsel what that person should do for himself. That's to avoid enabling. You don't want to enable them. They got a problem and you know, hey, if I did this, it would help them with that problem. Yeah, but would you really be solving the problem for them or just enabling? So, will not always do for the one seeking counsel what the person should do for himself. Give a man a fish, you feed a man for a day. Teach a man to fish, you'll feed a man for a lifetime. So the first day I might have to give a fish, you know, because they're hungry. But while they're eating the fish, I start my lessons on teaching them how to fish. So that's why he didn't say don't do for them, he said don't always do for them. Now they could have went out and got their own fish, but they didn't. So okay, I'll give them a fish to keep them there, but then I'm going to immediately start teaching them how to fish. And then the next time they come for a fish, I'm not going to give them one. Why? Well, because he didn't go out and fish for himself, and he knows how. Well, how do you know he knows it? Because I just taught him. I just taught him how to go fish. And all week, he's not bothered one time to go drop a line in the water. What do you expect him to jump out on your plate? It's not going to happen. So don't always do for them what they can do for themselves. Number 11, the wise counselor will be prepared to settle disputes between two people. Please read that section. I'm not going to because of time. Number 12, the wise counselor will know good general advice and guidelines about childbearing. Page 116. Number 13, the wise counselor teaches that individual relationships in the family are more important than the family circle. All right? I take the whole, I've got, I got 2 girls and 3 boys. I take the whole family on a vacation. And we go up to the craters of the moon. I'm using some actual personal examples. We go up to the craters of the moon, and boy, the kids loved it, you know, and the whole family had a good time. And then I take my whole family somewhere else, and the whole family has a good time. And I never spend individual time with my 2 girls or my 3 boys. And no individual time with my wife. You think that family's going to wind up dysfunctional? Yeah. Why? Because individual relationships are more important than the whole family circle. It's the same way in business. If the guy spends so much time running the business and no time with the individuals that are running the business and doing the work for him, he's got to make sure he's got the right supervisors and that the supervisors know how to train the people and follow up and find out, okay, you're doing fine, all right, good. Oh, you need a little extra training? Well, hey, that's what I'm here for. And so he can't spend all of his time on the whole business. He has to do those individual things too. Otherwise, the business is not going to succeed. It's going to be like termites that are going to eat it from the inside out. It's the same way with the family. I know of a family that the girl is feeling left out, and this was just within the last year. The girl is feeling left out because the dad spends all his time with the boys, and she used to be daddy's girl. But see, she's 12, 13 years old now. And the boys are, you know, they're getting up in their teens. So he's spending time with them, and the girl's feeling left out. Why? Well, she was daddy's girl. And he used to spend time with her and the boys. Now he seems to spend it all with the boys, and expects mom to spend all the time with the girl. Now that's not going to work. He needs to have individual relationships with all the boys and girls and his spouse, so that the family circle will succeed. Otherwise, it's going to be like termites. And it's going to eat the family up from the inside out. Okay? So, individual relationships in the family are more important than the family circle. All right, and that's actually the end of that section. Page all the way through 117. Please read that. And we'll briefly start, we've got a few minutes left. Let's go to page 118. Counseling and being fair to other preachers. Number 1, a wise counselor will not counsel with a member of another church without the prior permission of that person's pastor. Why? Because God put that person in that other pastor's church. When I invited you, brother, and you, Brother Dennis over there, when I invited you guys to the men's meeting, did I tell you, make sure it's okay with your pastor first? Absolutely, that's it. I'm writing a textbook, I'm doing a research now, on Christian morals and ethics. And it's not ethical for me to invite you to go to a function of our church without you asking your pastor if it's fine. And I'm sure he would say it's okay, because I know Brother Brown, I've known him for years and years, well over a decade. And in fact, he used to be one of my students, come to think of it. But that's ethics. I mean, that's ethical. That sure, we want to make it open to everybody, but we want to make sure that your pastor says it's okay. Online, they have to submit a pastor recommendation form before they can study online with us. You know what the recommendation form's for? It's not the pastor to recommend them to come and take classes with us. It's to inform the pastor that they're taking classes, and he's giving his permission by turning in that form. If he doesn't want them studying with us, he just doesn't submit the form, and they're not going to study with us. I can't prevent them from going online and monitoring the courses, because that's open to everybody. None of the classes are closed classes. But if they want to study with us and earn a degree, then I know they're studying with us, and I'm going through their papers and making sure that they're doing everything the way they're supposed to be. Monitoring, I can't stop them from doing that, but if they're going to earn a degree, and that means I know they're studying with us, they can't unless their pastor says it's okay. And so it's the same way in counseling. If I'm counseling someone, they're a member of another church, their other pastor has to give us permission for me to counsel them. Yes?
I do have one question. So, this is for instance, you have somebody start here and then they move churches. You still have to get that other pastor's permission?
Yes, if they move their membership.
Okay,
yeah.
I wanted to make
Yep.
sure.
No,
Okay.
because once they move their membership, they're no longer a member of this church.
Okay,
And so whatever church they're a member of, that pastor has to give permission for them.
okay, just making.
And same way if I'm in the middle of counseling
Uh-huh.
and someone would move to another church, I'd say, well, you're a member of that church now. I'm willing to continue counseling, but you're going to have to get the permission from your new pastor
Okay.
to come here and be counseled. Okay, well, I think we're out of time, so we finished up on page 118.